Hi, everyone. My name is Miss Lab Magic, and welcome to Simple Talk, a podcast where we unpack the biggest challenges finance and accounting teams in the insurance world are facing with, but we also uncover smarter, more efficient way to run your operations. Today, I'm super excited to have Jamin Friedlin from M3 Insurance join me. Jamin, welcome. Thank you for joining the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Always a pleasure. So maybe to start, if you could tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, your role, background, and about M3 Insurance as well, that would be fantastic.
Sure, absolutely. So, nothing too exciting about my background. I'm a CPA by nature, so obviously that's going to kill the story right there. But I did, I came up in public accounting, worked for a larger public accounting firm for a number of years. Strangely enough, I was actually in a niche group. I focused on utilities mostly. So, how on earth I ended up in the insurance industry, who knows? But I did that for a number of years. And then I actually went governmental and I was the finance director for the city we live in for a number of 5 years. As you can imagine, local government has its challenges, and I was just looking to get out and find a new environment. And I literally just kind of stumbled onto this role at M3. I was brought on as their controller, knowing nothing about insurance, nothing about brokerage. But it seemed like a good fit. Culture was a big thing for M3. The interview process was great. So I was like, yep, let's do it. Let's give it a whirl. That was almost 4 years ago at this point. I'm now the senior director of finance, so I oversee basically our entire accounting function, our finance function, and what we call our revenue integrity piece. We have centralized billing here at M3, so we kind of oversee all the transactional piece of things too. And then we work really closely with our FP&A team. But I oversee kind of the three functions of revenue integrity, finance, and accounting. And like I said, been almost 4 years, and I have not looked back once. It's been fantastic.
Well, that's awesome. And you're a perfect person to unpack challenges as well as opportunities. But can you tell us a little bit about M3 Insurance?
Sure. It's an ever-changing company. It was actually founded in 1968 as a life insurance shop. A gentleman by the name of Lauren Mortensen. He's the first M in the three M's that make up M3. Really small shop, kind of west side of Madison. Now we've grown to actually the fifth largest privately owned insurance brokerage firm in the U.S., which was a surprising stat to me. I did not know that till last year. Growing from kind of one person to 500 plus employees with 10 offices, obviously a nationwide footprint. When you think of a full service insurance brokerage, that's what we do. Property casualty, employee benefits, surety. We have a financial services and retirement planning line of business. And then we have a separate division focusing only on individual and small business, kind of segregating that out. We've been branching out a little bit over the past couple of years with what we call our connect companies, kind of falling outside of the normal insurance brokerage business. So we actually have a company called the Employer Group, which specializes in PEO, payroll services, HR consulting. And actually, a couple of years ago, we started a pharmacy consulting group, which provides obviously pharmacy consulting, RFP reviews, audits, and then reporting and analytics. And that's taken off really quickly as well too. So again, normal insurance brokerage lines of business, but we're also kind of looking to diversify and remain competitive and find new ways to generate revenue.
Sounds very, very interesting. Well, as I said, you're a perfect person to kind of speak because it seems like you have at least reach, if not oversight, on so many different accounting and finance interactions, if you will. So, out of curiosity, what are some of the top priorities you and your team are focused at on M3?
So we have 100 of them going on. Obviously, we're always busy. One thing M3 is really good about is being on that proactive piece of things. We are really looking ahead. We're not just stuck in one place. So we're always thinking like, what is the tech landscape going to look like in the next, 2, 3, 4 years out? We know technology plays a huge, huge role in our industry right now. So we look at some of the challenges we have. That's generally where we start. And we look at like our legacy systems, right? So we have our AMS. it's challenging, right? It's very manual. There's no native integrations or anything like that. And we know like time is probably limited in terms of how long we're going to stay on our legacy system at this point. So one of the big priorities we have right now is kind of reaching out to some other companies and discussing this with them in terms of, their appetite for building out an AMS. How can we partner with you to help you design it to kind of meet our needs and make it more intuitive to what our team is doing and what the other brokers would be doing in the system as well too. Along that front, we started that project, which was then kind of funny because we realized, one of the biggest issues we have with our legacy system right now is the general ledger functionality and the fact that there's no AP module, no HR module, nothing like that. So we kind of took a step back and said, okay, let's put that a little bit on the back burner. We'll continue to work with that, continue identifying problem statements and building out a design for a new AMS. And we started looking at an ERP. So we actually just signed on the dotted line about a month ago to implement an ERP. Not the best time of year for an accounting team, but we decided let's do it. We know we're going to end up better on the back end of this project. And a lot of it comes down to kind of the change management piece. We're looking at all of our legacy systems right now. So this is not just an accounting and finance piece that's getting impacted. This is now firm wide, right? AP is going to look different. Expense reports are going to look different. Our human capital management platform is going to look completely different. It's all going to be living in one place, but we identified the opportunity here with an ERP, like, okay, let's scale the accounting team, get rid of all of these manual journal entries, lose a bunch of legacy platforms that we don't need. And because the ERP system that we're going with, we can integrate with it really easily. That opens up the floodgates for potential opportunity for future AMS systems. So those are the two big priorities that we're working on right now, along with just change management overall in the firm, because we're looking to make a lot of changes and identify those manual processes and how can we automate those.
That's something interesting in the insurance space that I found personally is how willing the organizations are work with partners to build something being successful. Most other verticals want something packaged done and
Mhm.
deployed. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It
So
is interesting, and not to cut you off, but that's something it just industry wide as well too. That was something that surprised me in the brokerage industry with some of the associations and organizations that we're members of. The way different firms communicate with each other. What are you working on? What systems have worked? I mean, the collaboration is phenomenal. And I think that flows right into some of the partnerships that we began building with some of our tech vendors too. Then.
yeah, because I mean, my background it was in the ERP space, in accounts payable, accounts receivable, financial technology, banking, not as a banker, but technology and cash management banking. So it was it is to me very unique how willing the brokerages and agencies are willing to work with the partners to come up with
Mhm.
the best of breed solutions. But going back to what you mentioned, it's almost like a three-tier system that M3 is looking at. You're looking at legacy systems, which ones are worthwhile upgrading, which ones in 3 to 4 years might be
Mhm.
upgraded. So we know ERP was a major priority. And then the business driver here is obviously something you alluded to. So I wanted to pick that brain a little more is optimizing efficiencies and processes. First question is, what's the impact of change if you just kind of sit on your hands? Because that's another kind of common theme in the industry. It's easy to sit on your hands. What was the,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of them. I mean, obviously, it's one reason I'm lucky to be at M3. We don't sit on our hands. Obviously, there's some holdouts that we need to bring along the way, but we understand there are impacts if we just stand still, right? We want to continue growing and moving forward. I mean, obviously, potential impacts, you have the financial impacts, right? Revenue decline, you could increase costs, right? So many more platforms, more people, you're not building scalability. So you have the increased costs that come with that. I think in this day and age of insurance brokerage, I think it's, the competitive positioning is important. If you lack digital tools, self-service options, personalized offerings, things like that. That's going to start impacting your retention. It's going to start impacting your ability to attract new clients. So I would say that competitive positioning is definitely a big one for us if we don't start implementing and utilizing the software that's available. Another big one too is finance, the finance team at M3, we are seen as advisors to the business. And the more manual processes and the more delays you have in closing the books and being able to organize data and things like that, it opens up the opportunity to start basing really important decisions on inaccurate and dated financial information. So we want to move forward and have that information in real time at our fingertips. So when there's a decision to be made, we can make the best data driven decision for the company, right? And I think one other piece that is important for us, and I kind of alluded to this, is we know we're not going to be on all our legacy systems forever, regardless of the timeline that we move on. So we need to start making changes now to be able to build the ability and have, like I mentioned, our ERP system that has, a very open platform with integrations and things like that. That opens up the ability and gives us more options in the future to look at potential new AMS systems, because then they can integrate and move like that. So we don't have to pass up on opportunities because, well, we can't integrate, so we can't do it, right? We're making some of those decisions now so we don't have to pass up on opportunities in the future. And that I think those are the biggest challenges with sitting still and not doing anything.
Makes perfect sense. But you now touched up on something that piqued my curiosity is you started out that you have hundreds of projects. We're focusing on this particular project. So out of curiosity, what is sort of, I think it's called the project hurdle rate. Like,
Hmm.
how do you prioritize out of the 100? And you guys are a big organization. You can handle a lot of projects, but hundreds sounds like
Yeah.
getting done in a year.
Maybe hundreds is exaggerating, but I'm kind of lumping in like audit and planning and budget. So it's like there's just a ton of things going on, obviously things we have to do that, regardless of how you prioritize them, there's a timeline and you have to get them done. I would say from a tech standpoint, we still have a lot going on. We're still looking at ways to optimize our AMS system. We're still looking at ways to optimize everything that we're on. Again, back to the point of we're not sitting still, right? We're not just going to be like, okay, well, we're getting a new ERP in 6 months. Let's just sit still. We're still trying to find ways to make things better every single day. And I think what M3 has done really well is we've invested in a more robust, what we call a solutions advisors team, where they're just out there talking and picking people's brains and going to these associations and conferences and things like that, and just keeping their ears open and listening. And if they hear something intriguing, they start having the conversations, identify how it's applicable to our firm, and then they bring it back and start talking to all the key stakeholders. And then we kind of start prioritizing those projects. From an AMS standpoint, we have an AMS Innovation Council, which I sit on, and it's represented by people, throughout the firm. And we just continue to make lists of projects, and as a group we prioritize them. Is it client facing? Is it not? What is the overall impact? And so our solutions advisors teams do a really nice job of identifying potential solutions, bringing them back, figuring out who the key stakeholders are, and then they do all the magical behind the scenes work of prioritizing things.
So for somebody like M3, I mean, your operational processes are obviously very much buttoned down, and it sounds like you continuously invest in innovating on top of innovating, like having specialty advisory groups and so on. But if I'm a smaller agency or broker, what would be your sort of be high level advice in saying, hey, I know you want to do these 10, 20, 50 projects. I know you can only do 3, 5, whatever. What are the kind of top 3 things that make a project? Yeah, this one is definitely a go. We'll wait on this one. And just from experience, it could be
Yep.
any triggers.
I would say obviously the first one is affordability, right? Can you do it? Can you actually afford to do this? I know for M3 what I've been through here and other places too is kind of finding that delineation of, is it client facing, is it revenue generating, things like that. Those generally will take priority over optimizing efficiencies from an internal process standpoint. So I think you have to look at those two things in terms of, is it client facing and will it generate revenue? Will it potentially build a little bit more scalability on the service time, on the service side, things like that? While HR, finance, shared services continue down the manual road, we'll deal with those later. But then you also have to look at the impacts of the projects. If it's revenue generating, but this internal project will eliminate a ton of manual processes, build a ton of scalability for us, allow us to move forward without hiring a lot of people. That's kind of where you have to have the conversations of what is more important at that point. Is it the client facing revenue generating or building those efficiencies? So I think there's no one right answer for that, but I definitely would say those are kind of the two buckets I place it in, and then I just look at overall operational impact.
And that's interesting. Do you find that finance can be, in certain ways, client facing and revenue generating?
Absolutely. I would say kind of client facing behind the doors, right? Nobody's really talking to us. Nobody sees us. We're not out selling business or anything like that. But I think of when we brought SimplePin on, right? That was a big part of our decision making process was what is going to be best for our clients. And as we kind of went through that process and built that out, we realized this is going to impact the client. So even though, it's not finance doing that, that is very much client facing and has a huge impact on our day-to-day business. Again, going back to the digital solutions, making things easier for our clients, that's huge. Automated carrier payable systems. Maybe it's not client facing, but we have really strong relationships with our carriers and we don't want to put those at risk. So finance is very much client, carrier, vendor facing, where we have strong relationships with all of them that we don't want to jeopardize at all. We're just behind the scenes doing it and making it happen.
100%. In my past experience, and you mentioned this, so that's what triggered it. I noticed finance team becoming more revenue focus. One, that's a bad way to say, but more part like advising on revenue, and actually having a huge hand in revenue from two aspects. One, on days of sales, outstanding. I'm always amazed in the insurance agency space because you collect a full premium. Those are third party funds. And if you can optimize that by a day, two or three, five, whatever it may be, I mean, that is certainly revenue generating. And the second part is what you also mentioned is data analytics. I mean, Salesforce is the biggest CRM because of data analytics, yet finance has all the financial analytics. So is that something kind of M3 looks at and models the financial impact of the data analytics?
Absolutely. And I think that's where our finance team is really strong. Obviously, when there's outside projects that we get pulled into, we'll look at it from a data standpoint and how does it work in our reporting structure and things like that. But just purely from a finance and accounting standpoint, I don't think we could run our business without the business intelligence tool that we have in place, right? And it goes back to those legacy systems. You cannot slice and dice and filter and build dashboards the way that M3 wants to digest things. Our sales leadership wants to see one thing, but our kind of department managers want to see another thing. And we really have built out our business intelligence tool and worked really closely with, we have an M3 AI team, pretty robust one. And that's kind of one of the challenges we're having. And what does the future of finance and accounting and FP&A look like? Does accounting and finance maybe split off because that's what we do? And then we have our FP&A team who are so intertwined with our M3 AI and kind of data team. Does that start becoming a relationship in our org chart more than accounting and finance and FP&A? we work together, we collaborate, we talk a lot, but that relationship between the data and what finance is doing is becoming stronger and stronger every single day. We're having those conversations. What does the org chart look like at the end of the day? Because so much of the information, or brokerages have so much data that we need. Finance has to help kind of break down and digest, and build dashboards and help people make decisions.
Feels like definitely a natural
Hmm.
progression.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, I mean, we focused a lot about the opportunities, but in my opening, I said challenges, unpacking challenges, I think I said. So I was wondering, I mean, not every project, not everything works out perfectly. From your experience, if you're running a project, what are some of the areas that you want to pay close attention, like pitfalls? Like, how do you manage it? It's never going to be perfect, but what are the things that people that watch this podcast can take away and say, that's interesting. Just things that kind of predict the future and highest degree of success for the outcome.
So I think I'm gonna kind of tackle this from just purely technology standpoint. So I think it begins before the project even kicks off, right? I think that the most important first step is getting the buy-in that you need, right? If your key stakeholders aren't on board and there's holdouts on that project team, they can sink the whole thing, right? They might not meet their deadlines. They might sit and complain about the project and bring other people with them. So I think one important piece is making sure like the key stakeholders and the people that are going to be working closest on that project are 100% bought in, or bought in as much as you possibly can bring them in
The
before that
consistency
project
is a
even kicks
killer.
off, right? Yeah, because one bad apple can really sink a project very quickly. I think in terms of like vendor selection for us for M3, what we've found in the 4 years I've been here is finding those vendors that we feel we can build a partnership with. We don't, M3 isn't looking for a vendor customer relationship. We're really looking for a partnership that we can collaborate on, because this industry is changing, right? Look at how program business is changing across the industry. It's just moving so quickly. Technology is moving, and we want to be able to have these conversations with our technology partners to say, hey, this is a big challenge for us. What do you think? What are you seeing across the industry? And should we work on this together to design this? We've had some partnerships like that we still have today, where when we have ideas, we bring them up and we start identifying solutions for them. It's kind of the way we're looking at the AMS side of things too, as we continue to move, is how do we get in the front door and build that partnership to be part of that design process, right? And they can design it around us, and then it's a perfect system for us. So I think those are the two most important pieces: is getting everybody on board, but also identifying the right vendor. That's key. Don't always go with the cheapest. Don't always go with the fastest, right? You need to have that partnership feeling with the vendors that you pick.
That's perfect. And you just remind me of something you said earlier in the podcast around change management. I think, in my experience, fear is something that we all have. Fear of change is probably one of the top things. I mean, how do you, as an organization, overcome that?
It starts at the top, and again, M3 is lucky because we have, the folks at top, they understand where this industry is moving. They understand we have to be maybe not on the leading edge, but we like to say on the bleeding edge of things, like let me try it first, then let them work out the bugs, and then we'll move forward. So we have that push from the top down, which helps us. I think also because things are so manual, and so process driven and things like that. What we've seen in the past few years as we've completed projects is maybe this team over here is still doing it the old way, but this team over here is using it the new way, and they see that and they start coming over to the other side. And it's not like we started with big, huge projects. We've just been kind of picking away at these, and the projects are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. They've been successful due to M3's approach and our solutions advisor team and how we plan these things out. but people are seeing the benefits, right? Like we have data behind it. Folks that are using some of our sales tools have 40% higher close rate than the other folks that aren't. So we have the data to back up the projects that we've completed and how they're actually working and how they can help you. And slowly people are coming along. We still have big projects. If we ever talk about, if we ever move forward with changing AMS, we're going through the ERP project. We're going to have people that don't want to do that, right? You have people that have been here 35 years and just don't want to do that change. And the biggest question we always have is, what if they quit, right? And at some point, you just have to take that risk, surrender to the flow, and just move forward with the project. And M3 has done that. We had the same questions kind of before we signed it on the dotted line to bring in a new ERP, just knowing it's a lot of work. We might lose a person or two, but you know what? We're going to be better on the back end of this.
I like the idea of data driven decisions, or sorry, out, because what you said struck a great chord with me, because success breeds success.
Mhm.
So if you can increase my close rate by 40%, you're going to convince me very easily. And if you can't convince me, I probably won't be an
Yeah, I'm
empathy.
not going to use the tools. My old way works, right? But we have, and that's been part of the relationship going back to our M3 AI team and finance and how they work together to be able to track that information. It's, we have the data to back up the success of some of these projects. Not everything works, I can't say it does, but for the most part of it's luck, part of it's the hard work. It's luck that we did smaller projects and continued to build on them. So we've seen early successes that kind of start bringing people along and get excited for projects down the road. But a lot of it is we've built out models that work, and we have the data to back up what we've done and say, yes, this was an absolute success. We can measure an ROI on this.
And I like that approach as you were building out this model of what success, how to track success, if you will. I don't know, popped into my head more like, how do you eat an elephant? It's just one piece at a time, right? And
Exactly.
built this great big operational model that works really, really well for your organization.
I just want to throw this tidbit in there too for the actual finance and accounting folks. One thing that we've done on my team, which I really like, when I first started, innovation was a big word, right? Innovation, innovation, innovation. And people get intimidated by that word, right? It has to be technology. It has to be this big shiny object. And what we started to do is to say, you know what, let's meet a couple times a year and solely focus on like problem statements. I don't care how big it is. I don't care how small it is. Let's just make a whole list. And the whole team gets to contribute and talk about like this process, there has to be a better way, or I don't like doing this. And we just make a list and they have some buy in on this. And then we start just picking away at it and figuring out ways to fix that. Instead of calling it innovation and just saying, what don't you like doing and what do you think we could maybe do better? They were able to speak up a little bit more because they were a little bit intimidated by the idea of innovation because we're not all tech people and things like that. We don't have pie in the sky ideas, but I really hate our bank rec process or I hate this process. Okay, let's put it on the list and see if there's a better way.
Yeah, I think it does become overwhelming when you look at this giant piece called innovation, and it touches accounting, finance, sales,
Mhm.
marketing, so many different departments. It's almost easier not to do anything. But if you start breaking it down and pulling out pieces that are really critical and important to you, which was almost like my one question, sorry, final question was sort of, message piece of advice. But if I were to summarize what you're talking about is that you have to just do something. You just have to start, and then it gets easier almost.
I agree. I think early wins are important, right? So if you're a firm that just hasn't, moved quickly and kind of see the writing on the wall, like, we're getting a little bit behind, but we don't know how to manage projects, or we don't have the team. We don't have a solutions advisor team like M3. We don't have M3 AI. If you're a smaller firm, start small, right? Get some early wins, get some early successes, and the excitement level around change management and making things different, it builds and builds and builds.
Amazing. Well, Jamin, this has been awesome. I really, really appreciate your time. I appreciate your input. I hope that everybody enjoys your experience. And I just love how programmatically you build out this operational process as M3, but it can be scaled down for smaller agencies that obviously don't have, as you mentioned, advisors. So really appreciate your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Bye for now.